Welcome to the Liberty UA channel. Joining us today is Yelysevych, entrepreneur and political figure. Welcome, Mr. Yelysevych.
Hello, hello.
Please subscribe to our channel, like the video, and leave comments because we will be talking about important things. People are interested in what Trump thinks, what the Europeans think, what Zelensky thinks, and when there will be peace in Ukraine. So today they all gathered together in a French city at the G7 summit, and Zelensky has already made a comment to Reuters. Dennis will share his opinion with us about these events that are happening and his understanding of whether we are close to a peace agreement or still far from it. Zelensky says the following: the leaders of the G7 agreed that Russia will not win this war in Ukraine, and they discussed additional sanctions to bring Moscow to the negotiating table. So do you see in Zelensky's statements at this summit a willingness to compromise?
No, they expect more compromises from Putin. Well, by they, I mean Zelensky and the Europeans.
And Trump, what does Trump say in response? Zelensky says he is asking Trump to give us licenses for Patriot missiles because we don't have the ability to close the skies. We need to close the skies. Trump says that the conversation with Zelensky was good. He doesn't say that Zelensky is not ready for peace. He says the conversation was good. We are on the path to negotiations and I will do everything I can. So there are no guarantees or promises. Zelensky in turn says that they are telling us about these licenses, and Trump has a very positive attitude towards this. How would you comment on that?
It would have been better if Trump said things went badly or they reached an agreement. When Trump simply says that everything went well, always, a wonderful conversation, it always means that nothing has moved forward. And Tatiana, as always, I listen to the statements of those you mentioned, the world leaders. But I always pay attention to what domestic propaganda says because it reflects Zelensky's real mood. And today, in sync with the G7 as various statements and remarks from world leaders were coming in, they continue to project strength. We will set conditions for Putin before winter. It would be better for Putin to make peace before winter. Otherwise, in short, there will be a collapse in Russia in the winter and so on. Well, you know, it's not that I'm tired of this, I'm just fed up with it already. I'm tired of the same thing over and over. We still remember he promised a blackout in Moscow, but nothing happened. Today I was reading, I think the American press, only 5 or 10 drones Russian air defense doesn't shoot them down, they make it through. And you see, why do my assessments differ from others? Because I'm completely outside of propaganda. Even when everyone around me is shouting, it doesn't affect me. I always think for myself and encourage viewers to do the same. That's why I don't see any positive signals specifically from Trump today. Maybe tomorrow there will be something different. I see Zelensky's attitude. They want to do it this way, and the Europeans have their own game. They need to drag things out. They need to drain resources from Russia while they rearm. They're not hiding it. It's been clear for a long time. And Zelensky keeps acting tough and is now approaching Putin from a position of strength. So if you notice, these recent relative successes have brought Zelensky to a position of strength. And at this G7 summit with all his statements, he's basically continuing that same note, that letter to Putin. They've adopted this rhetoric and are proceeding from this stance. And this is harmful because I'm all for it if we are so confident in our abilities that we can actually do something serious to Putin. But if we're discussing peace talks, publicly saying this doesn't bring peace closer, that's all. So the question is, does Zelensky want peace for Ukraine, or does he only want the kind of peace where he comes out looking strong? And believe me, it's not so much that he wants to humiliate Putin. In general, let everyone decide for themselves who's a friend or an enemy. Things there are very, ambiguous. But the task is to show his plebs, meaning his voters, his not so numerous potential voters, Zelensky's electorate, that he bent Putin to his will. I'll go into the election saying I put Putin in his place. Putin sees all of this. You understand? If we really had more resources, if we could crush Russia, that would be a different story. I wouldn't be saying this right now. But the situation can change. Yesterday we discussed these semi-drones, semi-missiles, this new hybrid stuff coming from Russia, and so on and so forth. Again, winter is coming, winter is coming. In Russia, no one ever stopped churning out missiles. Trump, I just want to explain to people what Trump is doing right now. Trump is still standing and watching. Two lunatics who want to kill their own people absolutely for no reason. And over absolutely nothing as far as these two nations are concerned. Putin for his power and money, and Zelensky for his power and money. And nothing else. No one in Russia really cares, except for those crazy Putin fans about those maps that Putin kept showing everywhere. The average Russian citizen doesn't really need it. Do you understand? But propaganda shows it one way there, and ours shows it another way. And people don't know what to do. That's why I'm trying to explain.
Yesterday I posted a video about the military recruitment centers on my Instagram, and I got so much hate directed at me, and they say it's Russian propaganda, that we don't have anything like that. And these are people I know. It's hard to believe, but people say this at every turn. I don't know why no one can come to their senses. But let's think about why Zelensky is demanding these Patriot systems, why he's demanding this. It's obvious. People are dying here. We had 42,000 people in the subway yesterday. That's because there aren't properly equipped shelters. Why can't Trump give us these licenses to produce air defense systems, at least to protect people? So Mosicuk was on our broadcast and said that they were given information. Intelligence had provided information that they would strike here and there. People are demanding, they're writing to him in the comments. So Mosicuk is a traitor because he could have passed this information to someone. But no matter whom you pass it on to, we don't have enough air defense systems. Why won't Trump give us a license? How else does he harm Ukrainians?
So people think that Mosicuk has information that Russian intelligence doesn't have, right?
Ukrainian intelligence gave information to Mosicuk. So why didn't Mosicuk pass it on further? Well, who did they give it to?
The intelligence gave it to him directly, but who did he pass it on to next? Who, besides intelligence, deals with such things? Well, you see, do you understand why Trump doesn't give a license for air defense? I think I talked about this not on your show, but on another one. Here's the situation. What is a license? They already dismantled and inspected the air defense system at Firepoint long ago. I don't mean it literally, you get it. They've generally known how to build it for a while now. I think they've secretly built some prototype somewhere. Now they just need a license to finalize everything and officially have the right to use it. I don't think America will go for this because I understand perfectly well that there are enough traitors here like Yermak who will simply send this straight to Russian intelligence. And that's it. So that's basically the whole situation.
But Zelensky, well, it looks like at this summit, he seems to care about people. He's focused on getting air defense systems, air defense missiles specifically to protect the population. And he probably understands that there might be some issues with Trump. So he's addressing the Europeans saying we need to build a real European shield. Individual countries can't handle the missiles on their own. The aggressor acts globally. We need to combine our technologies and air defense capabilities into a single network right now in order to protect the European sky as well. How do you assess this initiative? Where should we develop these missiles? In Europe, in Ukraine? Why should Europeans agree to this? Maybe they should, because if, as you say, they are rearming and we Ukrainians already have experience, perhaps there is a rational point in involving us and producing new air defense missiles together.
Look, Zelensky doesn't care about people. As you said at the G7 summit, I'll explain why Zelensky keeps talking about air defense all the time. The more Russia carries out shelling and the more suffering people experience, the more people die, get injured, lose their apartments and other assets, the greater the dissatisfaction with the war and the stronger the desire to end the war. Do you understand? This doesn't suit Zelensky. He needs to keep fighting and to fight in a certain way. Regarding air defense for Europe and everything else, the EU. First of all, they don't have the kind of technology that the US has. Europe has long fallen behind in technology because it has stifled, suffocated, and overregulated everything that could possibly be regulated. It's not an environment where any kind of innovation is possible at all, in principle. If you're saying that you might as well assign it to Zelensky, like, come on, provide air defense for all of Europe. If we pump you with money, give you access to the technologies they have and the production capacities, you'll do everything. But you know, the arms market is tough. And America itself doesn't need some Firepoint and Zelensky along with it. That would become a competitor. And besides, the Europeans understand this perfectly well themselves. Besides, you know, at the summit, it's all hugs with Macron again. But I want to tell you with absolute certainty, I can't say where I got that from, but with absolute certainty. Even some of the people who are present at the G7 can't stand Zelensky anymore. They consider him dangerous. I mean, almost that dangerous. I almost gave him a compliment there. Well, Putin is considered the most dangerous in the world, but almost as dangerous as Putin. So should this person really be given things like that to handle? On one hand, these same Europeans want to weaken Russia and buy time to rearm, and at least manage to do something in the face of the threat. But on the other hand, they understand that Zelensky is no longer in a condition where they can work with him like that. But I want to caution both you and me in this regard. The way you just described everything, if you present it like that, you could almost puff out your chest and say how proud I am that we have such a powerful system now, and Ukraine and everything else. And I would do just that if we were talking about someone in the market creating something good in Ukraine, something in demand, something that helps Ukraine defend itself. In reality, unfortunately, we are all hostages right now. And the more things like this happen, the more Zelensky will be pumped up. Do you understand? I'll explain it more simply. If there's a victory, then Zelensky wins alone. If there's a defeat, it's for all of us. That's the story we have right now.
I read opposition channels and the president's office channels, and I see how they form sentences and questions there. And to speakers like you and others with similar rhetoric, I ask questions the way they are written, because people read these channels and they should have the opportunity to interpret this in different situations, to interpret it this way and that way and another way. Let's talk about 20 or 30 billion euros also sounds very impressive. We need this money. Zelensky says this. He says that Russia is burning and we want it to burn even more. Ursula von der Leyen says, you know that we don't have enough money. We are allocating 90 billion, but this money is not enough. We need to allocate an additional 20 or 30 billion. And supposedly, where can we get them? Well, countries like Canada and Japan need to chip in, so to speak, and cover these missing billions for Ukraine. So what do you think? How true, honest, and sincere is this? Chip in, cover these needs, and give Ukraine the opportunity to fight through the summer and fall. Does it sound like that, or does it sound like really help these people because we need to pay the military salaries and they can't hold out? How do you interpret this?
Well, first of all, before that, there was a request for an additional 20 billion euros from NATO, specifically from NATO. There was information about this last week. If you're talking about that, it doesn't matter whether it's this or other requests, whether it's fair or not. Well, if I were, say, a taxpayer or citizen of Canada or Japan, of course, it would be extremely unfair. But that's not the main issue here. Of course, people here who have lost their minds because of propaganda think that everyone owes us endlessly because of our situation, and they really don't want to think about it. But why is this situation happening? And if it has come up, maybe it needs to be resolved somehow. Tatiana, give Zelensky 20 billion, 30. In 5 or 6 months, we'll need another 20 or 30. In another 5 or 6 months, another 40 or 50. And you could keep doing this for another 10 years. And nothing has changed. You can keep insulting, keep provoking Putin, showing him that he's already lost his position and that we're cool. You know, Tatiana, it's like if I release a video about Bandera, but I'm talking about the ideology. But what I want to say is, it's not just about Ukraine. Ukraine as you know it, as I know it, and as most of our viewers know it. Basically, it's a free country. A free country. With its new history. But that same Bandera wanted Ukraine to be a completely totalitarian, cannibalistic dictatorship. But this is Ukraine, you see, Tatiana, that's the thing. It's like now, for example, someone says they're a Russian patriot. What kind of patriot are we talking about? Of Russia as such, Putin's Russia. Or a person like Yuridut says, I'm pro-Russian, I love my homeland the way I know it. Not Putin's. No, that's the question. And who said that if Zelensky actually wins and everyone starts saying this is Ukraine, you, me, and our viewers will be able to live in this Ukraine? I don't understand. There was that broadcast with the single mother who got 5 years, the latest case, my case, other cases. Just imagine that kind of victory, that kind of country. No, I'm glad that all those infrastructure things will stop being destroyed. You get it? I don't want anything destroyed in Ukraine. Here, you need to do it like in those parables. I'm ready to take it. There's no need to bomb, I mean, for the war to end. If people choose this kind of dictatorship, let them live with it. But Putin shouldn't keep crushing Ukraine any further. Please. It's not like if I can't live there, then let everything burn. My family and friends are there, and I hope to return. Do you understand? People should consider that. And so Zelensky's victory for them, for all of us, will seem just a bit better than Putin's victory. That absolutely does not mean that Putin should win. We need to settle for a draw. Elections, returning Ukraine to a democratic path, moving closer to the United States, but not in the format of give us something and we'll make cheap missiles for you. That's all nonsense. And to build the greatest economy and to ensure freedoms like those in the United States. That's the key point. And unfortunately, I can't break through this wall. People don't understand what's really needed for success.
That's true. I wanted to bring this up with you, but I plan to wait until the end of our conversation. The people, this mother who came under sanctions, well, not sanctions, but who received a 5-year prison sentence, she was on our broadcast today. She is really asking for public attention. She says she is in despair. I'm not sure if you'll watch the broadcast with Natalia, but I think you'll watch the broadcast with Dennis. If possible, please help spread the word. Because she says, what should she do? Who will take care of her child? She doesn't know. And she also doesn't fully understand what she's being punished for. So the only ones who can help her are people, because lawyers can't do anything for now. Regarding the economy and development, do you see Ukraine in the future as a country that strives for collectivism?
No, collectivism is everything I fight against. Collectivism is, to put it mildly, bad, and it always leads to failure. I support strong individualism. That's also one of the most important things. Some may see these as empty words or not think about or understand them, but this is ideology.
I'm curious, where does the individual fit in your ideology? In other words, should a person create value for the state in order to leave the state healthy and wealthy for future generations? Or should every person use the state for their own purposes so that they feel comfortable?
Let's have a very brief introduction for people who aren't very familiar with this topic but want to understand it. I'm a libertarian. Libertarianism as an ideology is divided into two branches. These are minarchism and anarcho-capitalism. Anarcho-capitalists actually say there should be no state at all, only like that. If you want, go and read about it. I'm a minarchist. There are also liberals, well, classical ones, not like the ones Slivakov is making now, classical ones. That is, a classical liberal believes the state is still necessary. Minarchists, libertarians like me, believe that, well, we make this compromise. We understand that it's practically impossible to get rid of the state. We make this compromise, but then if it exists, it should have only minimal functions. And that's what I'm proposing. If people analyze it, they'll see that everywhere the state intervenes, problems start to appear. The state runs Ukrzaliznytsia, there's corruption, it smells like urine in the train cars, the pricing is unclear, and everything is always late. These conductors grumble, well, I meant to say the train attendants. It's a complete nightmare and there's never enough money. We've brought up this issue so many times. Subsidies, give. Ukrposhta, it's the same story. The defense sector, well, we weren't prepared for a war with Russia. All these, what are they called, defense industries, they're all nothing, zero. You understand? But it's been state-owned for so many years. What if there was a market, like in the US? In the US, there isn't a single state-owned military enterprise. What if this were all private and competitive? You understand? That's how it's supposed to work. There should be a stock market so that, as with SpaceX, you could raise money, create something, and make your employees wealthy. That's what Ukraine needs. Not Bandera, not you're bad, not don't speak Russian. All of that is nonsense. It won't put food on the table. And these guys, they'll understand that. But only when things in Ukraine get even worse than they are now, when they stop giving us money. And one day they will have to face that situation. And there's no money. How will we get the money? They've driven out the smart and active ones. The rest have nothing in their heads. That's it. What happened before in Ukraine's history could happen again to people like that. I'm not saying it will, God forbid, but it could if things go that way. It'll be torn into small pieces. Russia is just standing there rubbing its hands, that's all. But I'm offering economic power that can be created. And there's no other path to success.
Where is the morality in your speech? Where is the morality? It's not about the speech, but the values. That's where morality lies. Why do I support this morality? Today's broadcast was different, and maybe people will find something meaningful for themselves. So when people went to the front as volunteers, they went to defend their country. Basically, people don't have property rights because the state can take away all our property at any moment and our lives and our freedom, everything in the world. People went to the front because they stand for morals, for moral values, for democracy, for the state. They united, and it was a collective movement built around shared values. If values are put in second place and everyone only cares about themselves, then no one would have gone to the front. So if we build this country purely on economic interests, we won't care about what we leave behind. Right now, we're just thinking how to earn, how to grab, how to seize, how to become successful, to relax, to spend, to get rich. That's all we'll live for. Where is the morality in that?
And who told you these things, that those who went to the front are fighting for democracy and everything you mentioned?
That's me. That's just how I am. Well, that's how I am.
Democracy and morality are different things. And I'll explain to you what it means in my philosophy and the ideology that I promote, how it works. There is a professional army. It's not like five guys are forcing you into a van against your will. Maybe you have another job, you're a specialist in your field, or maybe you're just a slacker, but you don't want to go. You have the right to make that choice. And professionals trained by other professionals, highly paid, fully equipped with top-notch weapons, they either recruit people or people join on their own, and that's all you see on Facebook. Here's the donation jar, guys, chip in. I need 200,000 hryvnias for gear to go to the front. Do you see what I mean? What morality is there? Who's stealing food from the store? He's poor because he has no money. And what kind of morality can a poor person have if he can't feed his family? Morality is for those who have a lot of money. Morality is for Elon Musk. Our Irina Zarutska was killed by an animal in the US, and all of America is covered in murals. He gave several $1 million for that. Do you get it? That's morality. Donations to cancer research and so on, who makes them? The poor or the rich? The rich. That's morality. Claims about both the rich and poor being immoral all originate from the Soviet Union. And some, I don't want to touch on this topic or offend anyone, but some religious influence that exists in post-Soviet countries and in general in all Slavic countries where basically poverty is considered good and money is considered evil. And all of this, together with that old history and those inherited narratives from our great-grandmothers, applies to most people, not everyone. All this has created the current situation and this view of life. Now, along with what you mentioned, there's also the give me mindset. So now people owe us. And whoever doesn't give is bad, but who gives? Rich America, which made its wealth on the very values that I'm suggesting you use to earn and prosper, not on those crazy Bandera ideas. Do you understand? And America to this day, with all its problems, is still capitalist and the freest. And Tatiana asking for money from America, weapons from America, intelligence from America, Starlink, America? So why don't we want to live by these standards? I told you this on air yesterday, and now I'll just keep repeating it. The US Declaration of Independence, adopted by the very founders themselves, was adopted during the war in the US. Because we needed to answer, what are we fighting for? And they said, we are fighting for the freest state in the world, where everyone has the right to be free in all things, and most importantly, the right to happiness. I don't remember it word for word, but you can look it up. I'll discuss this at my meeting. And today, ask the volunteers you mentioned, whom I respect for their actions. After that, everything depends on their views and their actions. So ask them. One is fighting, he'll tell you. I talk to him, I talk to them. One is fighting for his family, he says for his family. The second one is still thinking about Ukraine, he's fighting. The third one says, I can't leave because of my conscience, but I understand that I'm fighting for Firepoint, for the dynasty. So don't say that everyone is fighting for the same thing.
We went for the same thing. We went to fight and help our army, all for the same thing. We wanted what was best, to preserve our country. That was back then. The situation has changed over time, of course. So why are we discussing these topics with you? They're not about psychology or morality. It's about how we should live and what to base ourselves on. There's also one more thing I haven't asked you. After the war, according to your ideology, what should my aspiration be? Healthy, in your opinion. Should I strive to pay taxes to the state and be happy about how quickly we are rebuilding the country, in which I might not even live a happy life? But maybe my grandchildren or some other generations, or should I try to minimize these taxes, somehow hide them from the state, go into hiding, or somehow conceal myself? In order to prosper myself and live my own life as I can now, and let the next generations live as they can. So what should be at the center for me?
That's a good question. And here we'll divide it into two parts. Up until the moment when the full-scale war started in Ukraine, everything was just as you described. In Ukraine, everything was just as you described. I was like that myself. Even though I paid huge taxes, everyone is still focused on optimization, completely focused on themselves. And that's how everyone should act. But the state, this doesn't mean that I'll pay. Well, first of all, you won't pay much in Ukraine because there's no purchasing power. You won't earn much to pay a lot without special treatment, only with special treatment. I'm a free market entrepreneur. But if taxes were 50%, and let's imagine that somehow by some miracle everyone actually paid them, would that really go where it should? Would anyone build you infrastructure or a professional army? No, they just steal everything.
Only honest leaders who came to power could do that, or couldn't they?
So if you're talking about how things should be after the war, minimal taxes, a clear and simple tax system that's absolutely the same for everyone, not like some people get special treatment or some are allowed and others aren't. The same for everyone. Everyone pays a little. Everyone pays a little. Everyone sleeps peacefully. The government gets exactly as much as it needs. I don't need that Putin seized and annexed Donetsk and Luhansk regions. It exists only on paper and costs billions of hryvnias. Some mythical people supposedly work there. I don't need that. I don't need 80 ministries of idlers stealing. I don't need that. I don't need the Academy of Sciences, which hasn't been capable of anything for a long time. They have university-owned fields and agrarian resources. I don't need them. They should be privatized. I don't need 3,600 state-owned enterprises. I don't need that. It should be privatized, sold to businesses. Business should manage it. That's it. Of course, according to certain rules. No monopolies. No powerful industries like that should be handed over. None at all. Not to a single player. That's how it should be if done right.
But you shouldn't create public good, not public. Each person should look after their own well-being as best they can.
Yes, of course, because if everyone takes care of their own well-being, but most importantly, you need to have the opportunities for that. Take Poland as a vivid example. Everyone took care of their own well-being and Poland broke through. But if you constantly have some scoundrel from the security service, the tax office, an official, a cop, or a prosecutor getting in your way just to profit from you because he's a dumb sheep who can't do anything without his position or his badge. If he's always standing over you, then of course that's just pointless. Well, tell me, Tatiana, if Elon Musk had a customs officer, a tax inspector, an SBU agent, a financial crimes officer, a cop, a prosecutor, an official, a firefighter, and even an environmental inspector standing over him, would he have created SpaceX? No. Would he have created Tesla? No. And Starlink, thanks to which Ukraine exists today without exaggeration and the front is holding, could that have been made? Of course not. You need freedom for that. Freedom of the individual, freedom of entrepreneurship, and the right tax system. Neoliberal, stock market, corporate law, and an independent court system. That's how everything should be. No one talks about this. No one mentions it. Today I saw a video. I posted another one on my Telegram channel with that bastard Pritula, the so-called volunteer, where he was giggling and telling how Zelensky called Mindic a word starting with D and a thief, and that's it. That's enough for me. He says that's it. The president has no limits. Who is Vova? I don't know. Do you understand what I'm talking about?
And of course I understand, but why aren't the law enforcement agencies even trying to find this out? They won't find out. They just drag this mother through the courts because she speaks badly against Zelensky. But yes, it's bad. And those people, they do harm to the state, but for some reason, no one evaluates how much harm that does.
That's why I mentioned Prytula. Well, finish it.
Tell me, how can this barrier be overcome? You can't overcome a barrier with justice alone. This woman gets 5 years in prison for nothing, while Yermak, Mindic, and Vova, who owns houses in Kozin, aren't held accountable at all. Let me explain to you.
This is why today Ukraine is a country of Prytulas, Sternanoks, and Portnikovs, not of the so-called Yelysevychs. Look, everyone understands who Yermak and Mindic are. These are people who have stolen, and not just them. Umerov, Reznikov, they have all stolen from our country. And nothing happens to them, but a woman writes a post and she gets sentenced to 5 years. Yelysevych speaks out and they open a criminal case against his mother too, just for reposting my video. 40,000 political prisoners. And at the same time, Pritula says Yelysevych is a Russian agent and that's enough for me because the president told me so. So basically, he's the lowest scum. It's obvious to any normal person. Just check social media, everyone gets it. This is what's causing the lack of free speech. If I had full access to freedom of speech, the ability to live at home, and if others, not just me, not just one special person, if others also had the courage to say this because there was freedom of speech, then people would have the whole picture. It would be impossible to trap people in this cocoon of propaganda. That's all. And now it's Orwell. War is peace, peace is war, black is white. That's all. But that's the bad news, the good news. Throughout history, leaders like Putin, who divide things into black and white, often maintain power for a long time. But still, everything has its limits. Perhaps Putin and Lukashenko are record holders in this regard. You won't be able to do this for long. Well, Russia is a peculiar country, but a society like ours, which has lived in some form of democracy for the last 30, well, not the last, but for about 31 years has lived in relative democracy, it will be very difficult to do something like that here. That's why, Tatiana, I'm doing this.
But if you look at it, now we have morality. From what we hear on social media, there is morality everywhere. And be this way and that way, help your neighbor and honor Bandera, all of this is there. But it doesn't help. But when it comes to the economy, for some reason, people immediately say that there is no morality there. Some people, like certain autocrats, only think of themselves and can't care about others. That's just how it is for some reason. Lukashenko, you mentioned him, and he mentioned Zelensky, and he even apologized to him. He says that he understands his situation, the one he's in with the war going on. He may be emotional, but he insists that Belarus is not our enemy. So why has Lukashenko's rhetoric changed somewhat? And why do you think he even apologized to Zelensky?
Well, as it seems to me, it's connected to the United States of America. But first of all, it's connected to the fact that we may not like Lukashenko, and you know how I feel about all dictators or whoever else, but we can't say that Lukashenko is a fool. Lukashenko was given a signal, Lukashenko improved his prospects, Lukashenko had an invitation to the US, and now he has a choice to make. Should he continue to be in the club of failed dictators? Or should he get closer to the US and realize that his presidency is coming to an end soon? He won't have another term and he probably won't run again. But he still has to live on. He's not planning to go straight to the grave after leaving office, after his administration. And he needs to think about the future. He has children and so on and so on. And I think that he finally understood where to place his bet. But that's just my assumption. I just can't find any other explanation.
If we go back to the G7, what are we talking about? That it's necessary for Trump to continue the sanctions that were imposed on Putin. Trump doesn't say exactly, I'll impose them or they'll be reinstated, but he's talking about the situation already being stabilized. So the world will have oil again, oil is flowing, so he can reinstate them again. Starmer, with the interception of the tankers, says that it is necessary to block Russian exports in international waters. And they even say that they will introduce some new sanctions again, another package. This should affect Russia, it should harm the economy, the military-industrial complex, and help Ukraine with ballistic defense. So what do Starmer and these Europeans with their sanctions mean to you?
When President Trump and America talk about sanctions, that's one thing. But when I've been at war for a fourth year and they're telling me that sanctions need to be imposed on Russia that will hit the economy, then what? And let's not forget, the hybrid war started back in 2013. So why the hell haven't you imposed sanctions in 13 years that would finally really hit the Russian economy? Because Starmer is an idiot and all these Europeans who are in power now, they're all political impotents. They're not capable of anything. That's it. And actually, I'll translate it for you into language people can understand. We're going to impose sanctions on Russia now, but in such a way that we can still trade with them, not make Putin too angry, not get hit ourselves, and supply Zelensky, so that this desperate guy fights with Putin who doesn't care about his own people. That doesn't work for me. I'm telling you again. Either we all stand together against Putin, or everyone just takes care of their own country, acting pragmatically based on their interest and geographic location.
What are they offering us? Thank you very much. Що пропонують нам? They understand that we have a difficult situation with electricity. Zelensky says that winter will be tough for Russia. The British apparently also understand that it won't be any easier for Ukraine. That's why they agreed to allocate 210 million pounds sterling so that we can purchase enriched uranium for civilian purposes. In other words, so that we won't be left without electricity. Europeans, well, the British mine it themselves, but Europeans buy this enriched uranium from Russia. That's why they need it, but they don't have anywhere to mine it, so they buy it there. But we, Ukrainians, can't buy it at low prices from Russia. We have to take on these debts and get it from England, and then pay back those debts.
Yes.
Here again, it's about morality and economics. Well, if we were to buy, the war ended and we started buying this enriched uranium from Russia. You condemn this because people died in this war, and we are establishing good relations with the enemy.
So look, I think any kind of brotherhood or love in the foreseeable future during our lifetime is impossible. A neutral, pragmatic attitude is inevitable, not just possible as neighboring countries. Naturally, without Putin, this process will go faster once Putin leaves office. That's clear to everyone. But I don't know for sure. I'll look into this market specifically, but I think that in the United States of America, it is possible to buy it for Ukraine if, in this example, you simply meant that trading with Russia is about what is profitable. Well, that's exactly the choice. Either we all stop buying from them together and corner them like the Soviet Union once was cornered and everything truly collapses, not just the myths propaganda spreads now. Or everyone pragmatically decides and takes into account who Putin is, what Russia is, which could one day act the same way he did towards Ukraine. I'm not just saying we should leave it to Ukraine. We can't do anything ourselves anymore. It's clear we have nothing left to work with. The closest alignment with the United States. I know you have speakers on your show who say independence, no Washington, no Moscow, no Brussels. A country with a GDP of $150 billion can't have what these people are talking about. These people are talking about something that isn't possible. They don't understand the economy or how the state works. They're engaged in mindless populism, which we discussed yesterday. They just want to please the foolish crowd. We have a choice. There was actually to move closer to Moscow, getting closer to Brussels, but that's just what it's called. In reality, there's no real benefit, and getting closer to Washington. But not just any rapprochement, not the kind that breeds more Soros NGOs, but the kind I told you about. With all this trouble and sorrow, we now have a historic chance to get closer to the United States. We need to take advantage of it. Why do other presidents go to Colombia and say their first task is to get closer to the United States? Why did Milei immediately become an ally of the United States? Why do all smart presidents work like that? Why does ours say we don't need that? I'll explain why. Zelensky. You see, Tatiana, even the dumbest person knows we need to stick with Trump and the States now. Even the dumbest person would understand that. But Zelensky doesn't do that because he needs to trade weapons. Going back to the beginning of the stream, the states see that they don't need this. So people buy from them, but Zelensky is now their competitor. I was the first to talk about the arms dealer. Remember, nobody understood this. From today, we have a full-fledged arms dealer put together by Zelensky.
A lot of people are saying that our prospects are specifically in weapons manufacturing. So we already have experience, we know how to produce it, how to use it, we have people who understand how to apply it. And so they say that Ukraine would be a valuable partner for any country, but only when it comes to producing weapons. Because I ask people, what else can we bring to the international market? For example, we used to export steel, but now blast furnaces have to be shut down because we no longer have that quota. And we know that they buy this steel from Russia. And for Ukrainians, it's not as profitable to sell it as it was, for example, last year. Maybe our services are actually good. It's just that we haven't established ourselves in the foreign market, either with services or with goods. That's why they say we have a chance with weapons or with capitalist industrialization, but only with that.
Look, that's a good question. I'll tell you this. An official shouldn't decide which industries are important or not. Which business and why should be a personal matter. What kind of business personally? What business? Yes, Razumkov has a network of pawn shops. He didn't build it. What business did Razumkov personally build with his own hands? What business did Zelensky personally build with his own hands? Don't say anything about Kvartal 95. He didn't build it. He was the leader of a creative team. He didn't create a business. If we didn't have this kind of stupidity in our country where oligarchs buy you so you put on a clown show as a political project against competitors, Zelensky would never have made that kind of money. Never. They would have continued at the House of Culture in Kryvyi Rih. Let's continue. What business did Honcharenko start? What center? The Honcharenko Center.
The Honcharenko Center, which provided worms.
Пам'ятаєте, людям взимку була така реклама, вони тепло надають зігрітися.
Well, you're joking, but people will think this isn't a business, that someone is funding it, that Honcharenko has a magic drawer somewhere, a printer that prints this money. I think there are more than 40 of these centers. So what kind of business did Stefanchuk build? What kind of business did Shmihal build? He was a top manager for Akhmetov. He didn't build anything, at least not as an entrepreneur. So what does this lead us to? That a person who hasn't created anything can't and shouldn't be making any decisions. Now I want to dispel the myth on air that we're going to have a Klondike or El Dorado when it comes to weapons. With artificial intelligence, which is currently temporarily blocked but is present on the market. Next week, ChatG 5.6 will be released. And all of this will be an artificial intelligence arms race. With artificial intelligence, with access to these technologies, this whole story that we will be the leaders in this, we will be the leaders in this, gets wiped out. This artificial intelligence, I'll tell you the name, it's banned. So far, only American corporations have access to it. It's called Mythos. Claude Mythos. So this Mythos will build anything you want for you. Absolutely anything. If you know how to do it and have access to the resources, you can do anything. It's not relevant. Yes, Ukraine is a testing ground like that. I'm not arguing. But you can test it in other places. You can test it in Africa. There's always war in the Middle East. There are hotspots all over the world. They will never end as long as humanity exists. What's my point? You asked what we should do. Industrialization. No industrialization is possible today, nothing except building data centers. You won't be building any kind of steel plant today. Nobody needs that anymore. That's all in the past. It doesn't work like that anymore, especially in the case of Ukraine. We need to focus on creating conditions for everyone. Medicine will flourish. It's already private in Ukraine. Excellent, one of the best in the world. Medicine will be a leader. The arms industry will also flourish under such conditions. Tatiana, let's put it this way. The arms industry, now thriving in Ukraine, didn't flourish under market conditions, as I said. Zelensky took money from all over the world and pushed everyone away from this topic, cut them off. Can you even imagine what happened? He centralized everything around himself, and they built some kind of drones there. That's it. If it were entrepreneurs, if everyone was competing, it would be like in Israel, for example. In Israel, it's entrepreneurs who create, well, they create businesses, and then Americans usually buy those businesses. That's a completely different story. When anyone can sit down and get involved in this, and if you're the best, they'll buy from you, they'll invest in you, they'll take you public, and so on. In the case of Israel, the state will take you under its wing. And everything else. Something else is happening. It should be different. There should be equal conditions for everyone. Well, of course, in a real modern capitalist economy, the services sector is about 70% of GDP.
I'm trying to remember or not.
Within the framework of people's business.
Ukrainians could provide quality services. And here's another idea. If Trump helps us stop this war, to stop it, then we can count on China opening Silk Road routes to Europe through Ukraine, and we could get some privileges or profits from that. Do you see this as realistic?
You need to work with everyone, including the Silk Road. Back then, former Party of Regions figures were focused on building it. I don't want to take anything as, you know, how to say it, like a key decision. Do this and everything will be fine. We should trade as much as possible with whoever we can. But the key thing is, what will you allow people to do inside the country? What conditions will you create? If the country stays like it is today, then whether you have the Silk Road or not, nothing will change. Nothing happens without freedom or a free economy. If there is a free economy, this Silk Road will find its way. Believe me, everything else will fall into place too. That's the only way it works.
So the Europeans, they were worried before this summit that Trump, now that he's finishing the war in Iran, would be able to fully focus on affairs in Ukraine, and the Europeans would be pushed to the background, so to speak. For them, it's important to definitely have a seat at the negotiating table, and for Ukraine not to give up its interests. Well, it's probably about territories. And they got worried, publications wrote about this, that it's really important to them. So this summit, do you think they left it with the same initiative they came in with, that Ukraine is under their influence, they will give money, and we Ukrainians will keep doing as they say? Trump is not at the forefront of this negotiation process right now. The Europeans are also involved and just as important.
No, Trump is at the forefront. Everyone is fawning over Trump. Merz gave him a German national football team jersey today. The European press is saying things were better when Trump handled Iran. Now Trump is back in Ukraine, and like a bull in a china shop, the Europeans already feel very uncomfortable. But let's be practical, Tatiana, and for viewers, regardless of your opinion on Trump, under whom did things start to move and we began to discuss negotiations, some Kushner-Witkoff visit somewhere? Under President Trump. I'm just reminding you once again, the Europeans had 3 years, these Macrons, Starmers, Merzes before Merz, this Scholz. They had time to say, soon this bad Trump will come, Ursula. This bad Trump, let's quickly get together before this bad Trump arrives. And at least Tatiana. It's not like they tried and failed. They didn't even lift a finger because it clearly benefits them. And that's it. That's why everything must be done manually. Trump is the key player, while the Europeans will try to disrupt things.
That's all.
Putin must definitely lose, that's for sure. Putin, not Russia. There are decent people there. Putin personally, specifically, must lose. But if Zelensky personally is allowed to win, then for the average Ukrainian, nothing will really change. Generally, those wanting to leave Ukraine today will do so at the first opportunity. But a president should come, and the circumstances and conditions in Ukraine should change so that people at least scratch their heads and think, wait, democratic elections, wait, they let people in with proposals. Maybe there is some kind of future? Or do you think that today Zelensky approves of this kind of forced conscription roundup? Popular uprisings against the military enlistment offices are breaking out all over the country. People are being jailed over social media posts. There's no room to speak. Yermak is on top, Mindich is on top, and tomorrow the war ends and Zelensky is like this. Well, you know, I had to be like that, to be the bad guy. But from today, I'm a Democrat. Yelysevych, come back to Ukraine. Come on, go live on air. Hurl all the filth and slander at me. Free this woman, let her write about me. Okay, have the parliamentary commission send the enlistment officers to jail. All right, that's it. Only a professional army. We're amending the constitution. No, it's the same person. He'll just have fewer powers, but he's already smelled blood. Lukashenko, like Putin, won't suddenly become a Democrat. It's hardwired in here, you see, Tatiana? It's either like this or like that.
And I think that a lot depends on people, on who people are more drawn to. There are those who are drawn to collectivism, to some kind of shared ownership, who care about common interests. There are those who want to live their own lives happily, peacefully, in harmony, and solve their personal problems. I found out what Europe wants. Europe is demanding a united front from Trump. They want no territorial concessions to Russia and no decisions made without Brussels' involvement.
Fresh, yes. Did you just read it?
Yes, I read this information today. Well, maybe it was published in the first half of the day. So they are worried that they are not the main player at this summit, so to speak. But it turns out that, after all, it probably is theirs. Well, Trump said that he did everything he could, but he didn't insist specifically that he wouldn't give weapons. He kind of goes back and forth saying that licenses are a good idea. He doesn't say whether he'll give them or not, just that it's a good idea. I'll help with whatever I can for peace. So, well, for now, the Europeans are leading.
That's just how it seems to them. Look, now they're going to insist on separating along the current line of demarcation. Right? That's what follows from this message. That's what I thought anyway.
You said this won't happen both here and on the stream. Yes.
If I ask you now, you would say yes. The viewers, if asked about the current line, would all say yes. If they ask me first, I'll say yes. But if we just keep pushing stupidly, the war will go on, people will die, and that's exactly what will happen, then why do I need this line of demarcation? Did you notice that I'm the only one who mentioned the misleading number about Donbass, about 18? In reality, it's 8% of Donbass, but still, the media keeps saying 18%. Looking at the maps, it's actually 8%, 18 in Donetsk region, not Donbass. That's actually a huge difference. You understand? That's it. I don't want to hear about these fortifications. They said the same about Bakhmut. Yesterday, we discussed with you that under no circumstances will they push further, and so on. If anyone thinks that all of this, President Trump remains in office and the outcome is uncertain. If no agreement can be reached, this ongoing lawlessness at military recruitment centers is costing lives daily. Some people think that this is the way to build a good, successful Ukraine. Yes, you will build it for yourselves, just like it is today. Where you have power and impunity, your hands are untied, giving you license for lawlessness. But it won't be a democratic, wealthy country where people will want to live. People will run away from there. That's all. So the question is, do they just care about themselves because in another Ukraine they can't do anything? Or do they want Ukraine? And that's a big difference. I can live in the European Union, I can live in America, but I want to live in Ukraine. But they will only be able to live and earn in this kind of lawless Ukraine when there is war, when they have these powers.
People don't want this suffering. Those in Europe who know they should come to Ukraine are afraid. People just don't want to do it.
Maybe
Not what I wanted to say in the end regarding these territories. So you say that we will probably have to lose these territories after all. We had Arctic Ring on air. We talked with him about Konstantinivka. He said that it's already 80% no longer ours. And in a month, the Russians might capture them. I'm watching his broadcast today. He says, well, at most 2 weeks, we Ukrainians will be able to hold our positions in Konstantinivka. And then, in his opinion, we'll have to either withdraw our troops from there or lose it. Well, he doesn't talk about how many people we're losing there every day. People are dying and the territory is being lost. So the question is, why did people die before? Well, I guess this answer from Arctic Reagan gives us the answer to the question, what were we dying for before? Why didn't we pull out those troops earlier, 3 or 6 months ago, or 6 months ago?
I can only comment on the political side. I'm not military. But that's how it turns out throughout the whole war. To lose a lot of people, then nothing works out, and then come up with a new point, distract attention, come up with a new point of concentration, and everything else. Also, everyone forgot about Kursk. They said we'd exchange Kursk for Donbas. Isn't this a political failure and maybe even a war crime to waste so many guys for nothing? And by the way, quite a lot survived there. They all could have died to the last man, thanks to Trump, because Trump became president. Why couldn't the Europeans come to an agreement? Some Europeans pushed him toward this. You don't really think he planned it all alone, do you? It was the Europeans. I know which country helped him organize and carry it out. That's all. That's all.
Everyone, we had an interesting and meaningful broadcast. Please subscribe to our channel, subscribe to Liberty TV. And now it may not be appropriate, but I want to ask you to share the broadcast about the mother sentenced to 5 years. She really needs publicity, help, and support. She has nothing to hope for.
Well, that's if my broadcast comes out earlier or rather later than this mother's. And at the time of recording, it's not on air yet. If not, then people will see this broadcast later.
I think yours will come out first, so people will see it and know that they need to repost the broadcast featuring this mother. Yes?
Let them subscribe now so they don't lose track of us.
Yes, with Liberty TV, we have short clips on Liberty TV. Maybe you can repost something from there. The person is asking for this. She is asking to spread the word and for help. So let's be humane and help however we can. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Dennis, for joining our broadcast. All the best.
Thank you.